Good evening. Welcome back to Grand Theft World podcast, hosted by GrandTheftWorld.com. It's March 13th, 2022. We got a lot to cover tonight, and this is episode 71. It's going to be called Ukraine Under the Microscope, and there might be something with microscopes going on with Ukraine. It's hard to see. First, we got to talk about the missing pandemic. Has anyone seen it? Also, Tony Fauci's missing. I don't know where these guys and the Gates and these guys have gone. All of a sudden, all the focus is over here, and they're like, what was in the left hand? It's like that scene in Beverly Hills Cop where Eddie Murphy is trying to bribe Gilbert Gottfried.
What are you trying to say, sir?
Like you'd be holding something in that hand, and this hand you'd forget about. This hand you'd be concentrating on. That hand you'd go, what did I have there? I don't even remember.
It's that type of misdirection that we have going on. And yet they're moving forward with the COVID vaccine passports. Might not be for COVID anymore, but you're going to need some sort of digital ID. It's going to maybe hold your passport, all this other stuff eventually. But let's get that important HIPAA information, your confidential information. Let's get that in some databases hooked up to the internet and let everyone have access to it. Sounds like a great idea, but maybe not.
Well, here is Deutsche Telekom to build a global COVID vaccine verification app for the WHO. Yeah, this is happening now, right? Because I thought COVID was over, right? This is February 23rd. Guys, this is before the whole thing started. I'm surprised. I can't believe I didn't see this. Isn't it interesting that 2 days later, even before this, all of February, the U.S. government was screaming about Russia, and that's probably why everybody missed this. That shouldn't surprise anybody. The QR code-based software solution. QR codes. Well, I've been talking about that from long before this ever started. They're very suspicious to me because of a lot of ways they can be manipulated. And I'm going to play a clip for you in a second that makes it even more clear. The financial details of the transaction, of course, weren't disclosed because why would we let you know how we're going to control your lives? T-Systems previously worked with SAP to develop Germany's Corona Warn app, tracing and verification app, right? And the Europe-wide digital COVID-19 vaccine verification system. Yeah, totally not related. This is a control structure. And it doesn't have to be just about vaccines. That's how it's going to start. But it's going to be used to control your life. Social credit, social impact investing, like Derek and I talked about. Please make sure to read Derek's article about this. I should have pulled this up in the first place. This is an important one. In my opinion, this one, like right now, the Ukraine new Al-Qaeda article and Derek's recent one about the social, these are two of the most important articles right now on the website, because of how clear this is the direction. Social impact finance or social impact investing is terrifying to me. This is them basically betting on if they can get you to do what they deem to be the right thing. And we already know that the word right doesn't even factor into what they're doing. They just say it's whatever we do is the right thing. They're going to see if they can influence you in a certain direction. And then we also point out that this whole concept, it just happens to omit that they can go both ways, which means they can also decide to try to profit off influencing negative outcomes. But we don't talk about that.
Next up, have you guys seen the gas prices? All-time gas prices, not just in America, like around the world, because of this non-pandemic related situation that happens to be on fire over there in Ukraine.
This morning, new inflation numbers confirming the struggle facing millions of Americans.
Every week is something new. It's beef prices, it's produce, it's avocados, it's takeout containers. Now it's fuel.
Fuel, food, and shelter, the biggest drivers behind inflation's highest increase in 4 decades. The Consumer Price Index report showing a 7.9% rise over the last year.
So they put a ban on oil from Russia. So again, this is all about energy, right? This is all about imperialism, hegemony, American hegemony. And there's a pipeline involved, the Nord Stream 2. And so we want to sell our liquefied natural gas over to Europe instead of letting Russia sell it to Europe, because Russia already sells 30% of the energy to Europe. And that's a little bit too much power and makes us nervous. So we're expanding NATO, and we're overthrowing governments in Ukraine. We're getting in bed with neo-Nazis, all for what? And what is NATO for anymore? As Chomsky told us, NATO is only there to secure energy transfers, the energy shipping lanes and stuff like that. So, again, if you're getting your information about this Ukraine from the corporate news, You don't know what's going on. You're being propagandized at a nuclear level.
Also, we've got a special guest coming up, probably about an hour and a half into the show. So we're going to lay out the current events from the past week. We'll get to our special guest.
Well, I have been constrained by a very narrow scope at AE 9/11 Truth of necessity, which is the World Trade Center towers. Now, what got me into trouble is that there's part of me that didn't want to be so constrained. There's part of me that wanted to speak out on the current disease that's going around. And so I did. And that's what started this series of adjustments in my professional career to where I'm now independent. And so now that I'm independent, what do I do with myself? I'm a fish out of water. I mean, it's a little bit of an ivory tower living in AE 9/11 Truth. And I got really good at what I did and what I'm continuing to do, which is to speak out on the World Trade Center. But the truth movement has a greater need than that, because I have been putting out weekly webinars for 5 years. I have given 700, 600, more than 600 certainly, presentations, and more than 600 radio interviews all around the world on those subjects. So the truth movement is well versed in the evidence for the explosive demolition, and the sets of evidence are very well defined. So, the part of it is a need to not just redefine myself, but to provide some value for the 9/11 Truth movement, which is new. And so this argument, this set of arguments that have been actually somewhat vicious in the 9/11 Truth movement between these parties, it's been very uncomfortable for me personally. I mean, I've stepped into it because for whatever reason, the truth movement, I think most of the people in it have seen AE 9/11 Truth as the tip of the spear, if you will, because it is the sharpest point to bring the to the public, to the media, to elected representatives. It's backed up by 3,500 architects and engineers.
And then after our special guest, we're going to go to a specially organized and orchestrated intermission to show you a multi-hundred-year history of what I could just label as narco-terrorism. That's what it is, narco-terrorism. And then to wrap it up, we're going to have this story on these labs that are used for research on biological type of entities. They're not biowarfare labs. They're not biolabs. They might be bioresearch labs, depending on what Assistant Secretary Newland has to say in the clips. But the idea is that there might be some labs in Ukraine. They might have the United States involved. They might have EcoHealth Alliance involved in.
After the Russians secured Pentagon-run biolabs in Ukraine, the U.S. Embassy was caught deleting proof of this from their website. And when the Russians shared documents showing the Ukrainian Minister of Health ordering employees of these biolabs to destroy all deadly pathogens, U.S. Senator Marco Rubio asked the U.S. State Department if there was any truth to this.
Oi! There are no biolabs in Ukraine. That's a conspiracy theory. There's biological research facilities, but that's completely different.
I only have a minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
And this is where you say no, and we can carry on with our presumed narrative.
Ukraine has biological research facilities.
Oh, no, that's not good.
Which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian troops, Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of.
What? No! Abort!
So we are working with the Ukrainians.
Pretty sure it's not Ukrainians.
The Ukrainians.
If you are an Undersecretary for State Affairs, do learn the name of Ukrainians.
On how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
So, Russia presumably have got their own scientists, their own laboratories, their own narrative, their own agenda, their own perspective on this situation. Clearly, all this is true. So whatever it is that's in that biological research facility, it warrants some concern.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination.
That's like if something's gone wrong at a dinner party. Would you mind now if we don't talk about this till we get home, dear? Couldn't it possibly be that the Russians are just straightforward baddies and there's no complexity to this and we haven't been dabbling in matters in Ukraine that are potentially problematic? Let's not mention that Hunter Biden can't go 10 minutes without getting paid 50 grand by a Ukrainian energy company. We'll talk about this in the car.
If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
Oh, unlike you lot, you lovely bunch of darlings.
The Pentagon calls them bio-research labs and containment labs, and claim their clandestine operation is all somehow in self-defense. But they are admittedly creating and storing weaponized biological material. And so these biolabs are in violation of Article 1 of the Prohibition on Biological Weapons. During the past couple years, citizens of the world have been getting an advanced education on bioweapons. And the very same crooks we see foisting the Great Reset medical tyranny are involved in the Ukrainian bioweapons labs. This is all being paid for with tax dollars through the Pentagon's Defense Threat Reduction Agency, the DTRA. U.S. company Black & Veatch has been working closely with the DTRA building bioweapons labs since 2003. Black & Veatch share an office in Kiev with Metabiota, who signed an $18.4 million contract with Black & Veatch in 2014. Metabiota got their start in 2015 with funding from Hunter Biden's Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners, who gave Metabiota $30 million to help protect the world from the spread of epidemics. This is the very same Rosemont Seneca that was mysteriously wired $3.5 million from the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. And the very same Metabiota partnered with Peter Daszak's EcoHealth Alliance, the group that Dr. Fauci used to funnel money to the Wuhan lab for gain-of-function research in 2014. In 2014, Metabiota, EcoHealth Alliance, and the Wuhan Institute of Virology were together researching infectious diseases deriving from Chinese bats. Metabiota is working with known CIA front In-Q-Tel. It is funded by the U.S. Department of Defense, the NIH, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Google, and the National Geographic Society. Metabiota's founder, Nathan Wolfe, sits on the board of EcoHealth Alliance and is a member of DARPA's Defense Science Research Council. In 2012, he wrote a book titled The Viral Storm: The Dawn of a New Pandemic Age, wherein he thanked his friends, pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and biotech venture capitalist Boris Nikolic. Boris Nikolic was named Jeffrey Epstein's successor executor upon his death. Wolf has also been seen hanging out with Ghislaine Maxwell on multiple occasions. He is also one of Klaus Schwab's young global leaders, trained on how to enact the Great Reset agenda being directed by the World Economic Forum. Russia claims the Pentagon has over 30 biolabs in the Ukraine alone. China claims they are operating 336 biolabs in 30 different countries. And now, members of our corrupt U.S. government are saying this is all a Russian conspiracy and that we should soon expect a false flag attack from Russia.
Our own Department of Defense and the Pentagon has insisted that this story is not true. Listen to this.
It's classic Russian propaganda. And I wouldn't, if I were you, I wouldn't give it a drop of ink worth paying attention to.
So if the Pentagon's saying it's not true, what is true here? Well, the Russian Ministry of Defense claims that it is true. In fact, they claim that they actually have taken some of these labs with pathogens inside of them. I'm going to read to you what the Russian Ministry of Defense has said now that we know that Victoria Nuland admits that these labs are very real. Quote, we have received documentation from employees of Ukrainian biological laboratories regarding the emergency destruction on February 24th of especially dangerous pathogens of plague, anthrax, tularemia, cholera, and other deadly diseases, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense spokesperson. In the course of the special military operation, evidence of the Kyiv regime's hasty measures to conceal any traces of the military biological program financed by the U.S. Department of Defense in Ukraine has been revealed. Now, the latest claim that's being made is, oh yes, what we were actually doing with the BTRP was we were trying to eliminate biological weapons that were in Ukraine, and this is part of the U.S.'s effort to help fund the destruction of pathogens.
Those are Soviet-era biolabs that the U.S. has been engaged since 2005 in trying to help Ukraine convert the research facilities safely. In Uzbekistan, for instance, the United States eliminated nearly 12 tons of weaponized anthrax from an island in the Aral Sea in 2001. Here's a statement from the Pentagon. Quote, on a daily basis, Russia propagates either directly through state-run media outlets or through the use of surrogates, disinformation aimed at BTRPs, the U.S. Biothreat Reduction Program's laboratory, and capacity-building efforts in former Soviet Union countries.
Here's the problem. The problem is because in 2010, there was an article written about the new level 3 biolab being developed under the Obama administration. And take a look at exactly what the pathogens were going to be that were studied at this level 3 biolab. U.S. Senator Dick Lugar applauded the opening of the interim Central Reference Laboratory in Odessa, Ukraine this week, announcing that it will be instrumental in researching dangerous pathogens used by bioterrorists. The level 3 biosafety lab, which is the first built under the expanded authority of the Nunn-Lugar Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, will be used to study anthrax, tularemia, and Q fever, as well as other dangerous pathogens. That story goes back again to 2010. We also know that as recently as 2019, that the Ukrainian officials have been touting the fact that they have this biological program specifically focused on studying diseases and biological warfare. The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine has published information on the Biological Threat Reduction Program, which has a section called Laboratory Construction. This section states, BTRP has upgraded many laboratories for the Ministry of Health and the State Food Safety and Consumer Protection Service of Ukraine, reaching biosafety level 2. In 2019, the BTRP constructed 2 laboratories for the latter, one in Kiev and one in Odessa. Here's the problem with that claim, is that in the last 24 to 48 hours, there has been a mad rush to delete old web pages that show what this program was actually about. In fact, as you can see from these screenshots, a lot of the information about what the US was funding in Ukraine in these biolabs now leads to dead links. These pages have been removed. In the name of transparency, in the name of clarity, why would you do that? Why would you delete and remove this information unless you continue to lie about what was actually being funded in Ukraine? Guys, this is a huge story on so many levels. And the biggest reason for that is because it begins to show evidence of the fact that Ukraine was involved in at least 30 bioweapons labs that were funded by the US Department of Defense, just like we funded in Wuhan. Guys, thanks for watching. Listen, there's so much to this story. We're going to continue to follow it for you. One of the places where we're going to be posting a lot of information about this is on our new social platform, Sovereign, SOVREN.media. And if you're not getting our reports when they come out because they are so heavily censored, just send me a text to the number on your screen and we will send our reports directly to your mobile device when they come out.
All right, so Ben Swan, he had a call to action there. Join his email list. You got a text to do that. That's call to action. This is what we were teaching students about in autonomy. And by the way, we just did the meet and greet. So Friday night was graduates talking to the new students. Today, I got to meet a whole bunch of new students. And guess what? A whole bunch of those new students come from you guys listening in the audience that are now over behind me in the other room when I'm teaching. students in the autonomy course. So first class is next week. If you think it might be for you, getautonomy.info/ignite. Click the buttons, find your way through, have fun. Maybe I'll see you in class. But without further ado, let's jump into this episode. Let's dive into this episode with this week's weekly report from Luke Rudowski of We Are Change.
Peterson has a really interesting way of looking at this, and he said it to me once, and it made a lot of sense. He said, people think that you should be weak and you should be docile, and then you should be a pacifist. He goes, no, you should be a monster. He said, you should be a monster, you should be ruthlessly ambitious, and then learn how to control it. And it's that old expression, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. It's an old expression, but it makes sense, because it doesn't mean that you can't be kind if you're strong, but it does mean you can't be strong if you're weak. If you're weak, you're fucked.
Budged! And, of course, weak men create bad times, and I think it's very fair to say that we are headed towards an overabundance of some very bad times.
Ready for something crazy? If you spent time in the standard American school system from kindergarten through high school, you've spent 15,000 hours of your precious life in a classroom. Shocking. But yet, look at where we're at. Many of us feel totally ill-equipped to function in this crazy, overwhelming, hyper-competitive world. We get anxiety at the prospect of adulting, and entrepreneurship totally just feels like a pipe dream. This is the thing. I found a resource that has made the hugest world of difference for me and my journey of confidence, self-reliance, and success in an unpredictable world. It's called 19 Skills for Success That School Never Taught You. It's a free resource that I consider to be totally priceless and has taught me many of the skills I need to know to be flexible and to succeed in a world full of uncertainty. Who knows what the next few years could bring? I believe that you were made for more. And if you could succeed without these tools for self-reliance, wouldn't you have done it already?